Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I'm going to show you my favorite rock climbing moment from 2022.
She had a hand on that, and she could put the foot up. I think everyone is...
And the athlete's face is kind of saying, oh, what is this?
What you just saw is 3 of the best climbers in the world watching themselves get beat by an 18-year-old. They look confused. Absurdism is the practice of showing inverted representations of reality or juxtaposing 2 things that shouldn't exist together in order to invite people to look at life differently. In comedy, it shows itself as the representation of irrational, nonsensical, and illogical punchlines where the joke is that there isn't really a joke. It shouldn't work, but it does.
It's weird because...
What you say?
Look at this clip again. I want you to pay attention to the faces of the women watching. Again, these are 3 of the best, most technical rock climbers on the planet. They all have this expression of almost bemusement. It's like they're being shown something that shouldn't be happening, but there's also this begrudging acceptance because they're watching it happen in real time. That's what absurdism is, and that's what it's like trying to understand the climbing of Japan's newest rising star. This is my breakdown of perhaps the most unique rock climber in the world. This is the complexity of Ai Mori. One of my favorite climbers of all time is Lynn Hill. Something I've always loved about Lynn is that in an era full of jacked, lanky guys, she was able to be one of the best in the world as a 5'2" woman with a -8 index. To a lot of climbers, being short is something that they need to learn to overcome. Ai flips the script on this. She uses her height to her advantage. Watching Ai play with height is so interesting that Kip from the channel Bouldering Highlights spent 10 hours understanding her climbing, and I reached out to him so he could share his analysis. He has a full video breakdown on his own channel, but he walked me through one clip in particular. This was one of the hardest sections of the Cooper World Cup. Athletes had to go from this position with the right hand jug and a crimp for the left and leap out left to latch this other sloper. As you can see, it's hard. There's no left foot to stop the momentum of the jump, and because of that, we lose Natalia Grossman, Mia Krampel, and Su Cheon here. Brooke Rabatou is 5'2", and she's very good at using her feet to compensate for her height. On this move, though, she just brings them as low as possible and jumps, relying on her raw strength to stick it. It works, but it saps her strength and she's off a couple of moves later. Now watch Ai do it. Did you see that? I made one tiny adjustment that made this move so much easier. Before going out left, she brings her left foot up, matching it on the crimp. Look at the difference it makes. She's able to stand way up on this blue sloper, getting 2 clips out of the way and doing the move statically, all because of that one foothold. Her height allows her to fit this smaller box much easier than a taller climber would be able to. Another thing I love about this clip is the half second before she gets this toe up. You can see her consider the jump and then she looks down at her feet and comes up with a new plan. This is another thing that Ai does incredibly well. She experiments. Before I can give examples of that, we need to hear a quick word from today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace has the best balance of technical features like their online shops, appointment scheduling, and SEO tools combined with an easy-to-use interface that means even people like me who are bad with technology can build a website. Their pre-made templates are so customizable that you can make your website look essentially however you want, but they're also incredibly easy to use. Whether it's a business, personal brand, or just a passion project, go to squarespace.com to get started with a free trial and use the code Ascensionism for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. This is the Hachioji Lead Finals. In the big traverse section, Ai initially tries to go feet first. After realizing that it won't work, she needs to reverse the sequence with a really tough heel hook before going hands first with some more conventional beta. She finds this ridiculous rest before punching through the rest of the head wall on her way to a bronze medal finish. Obviously, this foot first sequence didn't end up working, but Ai is never scared to try something out before actually committing to it. Here's her in Edinburgh. She makes it to this hold, latches the toe hook to hold herself in place, and then sort of just looks around. She thinks about reaching out and then decides to bring her left leg up. Even this move is subtle. Notice how she reaches the left hand back before repositioning her foot so she never swings. It's a conservation of energy and a level of composure that's really impressive for someone so young. Here's the same thing in the Edinburgh semifinals. She can't reach the handhold, so she reaches down, shifts the toe over, and makes the move again. This is nothing groundbreaking, it's just really good, fundamental 3-point climbing. Once you see her do this a couple times, you almost can't help but notice that Ai is constantly looking around and plotting her next move. This is another thing she does differently from everyone else. Most climbers see a route as a series of handholds complemented by footholds and body positions. Ai looks at things differently. Instead of focusing on the handholds, she focuses on the movement between the holds, plotting the most efficient way to complete that movement using her feet and her body positioning. Like here, low on the wall in the Edinburgh finals. Ai sees the next position, which is this handhold. The most efficient way to get there. Lock in this toe hook and stand up statically. Take a look around, figure out the next move, experiment with the reach, and it works, so on we go. This clip also shows another neat little trick that Ai likes to pull, flipping her hand. She does it again here, high on the head wall in Morioka, to generate for the throw. It's a really clever, minuscule adjustment that either mitigates or adds the tiniest bit of momentum. It's neat, but like I said, the true magic of Ai's climbing isn't in the hands, it's her feet. What she does with her feet is so subtle that it's incredible to watch. A lot of short female climbers like Brooke Rabatou are good with their feet, but Ai sees things that even they don't. Here's an example, and again, credit to Kip from Bouldering Highlights for pointing this out to me. So Cheon wants this handhold, and she's trying to use a heel hook to pull herself up into it. Unfortunately, while the heel helps her generate power, it also gets in the way. You can see that when she moves, her right leg is almost blocking her body, making the move more difficult. Now, watch Ai try it. Did you see it? It's subtle, so I'll play it again. Ai places the heel, but right before going, she swaps it to a toe. In slow motion, you can see that this changes the direction her hips are facing. Instead of getting in the way, like Cheon's, Ai's leg sort of tucks inside her body, allowing her to complete the move. In fact, it's not just her feet. Ai's body positioning on a fundamental level is almost always optimized. In this way, she reminds me a lot of Kim Jae-in, who I personally think is the greatest competition lead climber of all time. Kim was exceptionally good at triangles or building a strong base for her climbing to help her see moves. You see Ai do this all the time. Even when there's no foothold, she just smears her foot against the wall, creating this triangle shape before making a move. The triangle balances your center of gravity, which allows you to reduce swings and keep your weight pointed directly downwards, like here, high on the Morioka head wall. See how, before reaching for this handhold, Ai sticks that right foot way out? That builds the triangle, making what would otherwise have been a semi-dynamic move into a purely static one. To do this most effectively, she'll often lead with her feet in a sequence. Again, most climbers, like myself, think in a series of handholds, and the feet kind of come after. Ai flips the script on this beautifully. There are two ways she does this: preemptive foot placements and trailing foot placements. Trailing foot placements are more common, and you see climbers do them fairly often. Here, Ai needs to move left, and she wants to minimize the swing. She throws up the right heel hook, which holds her weight in place until she gets the handhold, and it's a much more controlled movement. Preemptive foot placements are more rare, and I think they're a lot cooler. Ai is once again going left here. There's no way for her to trail the right foot to keep her momentum in check, so instead she turns her body left, reaching out with the left foot and smearing it on this dual text hold. This cancels the swing out before it even begins. This clip once again shows another thing that Ai does really well, which is climbing taller than her actual height. Look at Natalia Grossman work through this same section. Natalia is almost 5 inches taller than Ai, but she somehow climbs this bit shorter, bunching herself up between these two footholds. It works, but it looks hard. By contrast, Ai is able to get her foot way farther out. The difference is in her arms. One of the first tips you get in rock climbing is to hang with straight arms as much as possible, and Ai follows this even on the most difficult routes in the world. In Morioka, you can see it. Natalia locks off with a bent arm, whereas Ai, from the moment she gets that left handhold, hangs straight. Keeping your arms straight like this reduces the tension on your biceps and allows you to make these moves less jerky. In the Cooper final, for example, on this undercling section, look at how she gets her feet high and her arms locked in to hold the position. Compared to, say, Jessie Piltz, the position looks much easier for Ai. I don't think this is purely based on positioning though. I think Ai is just stronger. This brings me to my final point about Ai Mori and the thing that made me choose the title of the Absurdist for this video. Rock climbing is often a game of trade-offs. Alex Megos is incredibly strong, but his beta isn't as creative as some other climbers. Tomoa Narasaki is incredibly powerful, but his endurance takes a hit. With Ai though, you don't seem to get that trade-off. Here's her looking incredibly powerful on the Morioka bouldering wall. Here's her, high on the Edinburgh semis, resting on a hold that other climbers had fallen on. Here's her popping through dynamic moves that other taller climbers had trouble with. That's the thing about Ai Mori, she does things that she shouldn't be able to. In his breakdown, Kip talked about how Ai, often the shortest athlete on the scene, climbs as if she were, say, Adam Ondra, one of the tallest. I think this exemplifies what I'm trying to get at with Ai. She sees sequences in a different way, not just in the macro, but in the micro. Every single adjustment, every handhold and foot placement, from this brilliant step up that completely broke the beta to this tiny hand flip that gives her just enough to hit the hold, all builds together into a climber that seemingly shouldn't exist but does, and that is the complexity of Ai Mori.